I thought I should talk about the constellation Argo Navis next, depicting the boat by which Jason and the Argonauts set sail in search of the Golden Fleece. Some may remember I mentioned Jason is said to have belonged to the archaic tribe of the Magnetes. Argo Navis is one of the biggest constellations located next to Canis Major and Centaurus, the larger part of the vessel under the equator. Constellation of Words tells us that Argo Navis equals the solar baris or bark, carrying Isis and Osiris during the Egyptian deluge. Here, the name of Nun returns, this time not as the Aramaic fish, like Scaliger claimed in the 16th century, but as an avatar of Egyptian supreme deity. I noticed the pattern of the clothing of the Father of Gods. Fish skin, is it not? As it so happens with Indian or Hinduist tales, there are variations in the story of this constellation. Equivalent to the Egyptian version, there is the myth of Isis and Iswara, with the ship Argo, steered by Agastya, the star Canopus. I have found little sources on this divine couple. It seems only old books mention them. Additional research tells me that Ishwara is an ancient sun deity equivalent to Surya, the midday sun. And there are several sites which seem to copy each other in a Christianized version of the myth, at least that is the impression that I have, in which the female counterpart is his mother rather than his wife. I suspect she originally stood for a principle more than anything, just like he did. His title is Lord of the Vessel, and this vessel is Argo. Argo is another name for Yoni. This encyclopedia of Hindu pantheon mentions the boat-like shape of this vessel. Some representations have not only the lingam in the middle of the sacrificial cup, but also the snake coiled around it. This at least gives us an idea of the antiquity of this thing about boats and ships being referred to as a she, at least in my opinion. In book 11 of his Metamorphoses, Lucius describes the rites of Isis when a ship is about to be launched, and he mentions a lantern which is carried in the procession, shaped like a golden boat, the aureum cymbium. The word cymbium is also used later for Roman soldiers' drinking vessels. Whatever that last reference may, it is clear to me that Ishwara is an ancient divinity associated with sun and sky. The community with Isis, his counterpart, seems to be expressed in the boat with a mast connecting the waters and the sky, just like this is expressed in the community of Yoni and Lingam. Without expanding on it too much, that same union can be found in the mythology of the earth goddess, exalted as an anthill or termite hill, and the sky god, as found in South India and Africa. See my Primordial Mount series for that. In other words, Ishwara and Isis in all probability stem from the era of the chthonic deities long before the pantheon was expressed solely via anthropomorph divinity. Bernadette Brady writes in Brady's Book of Fixed Stars that the boat is the vessel of Manu, drawn into safety by the divine fish during one of the Indian deluges. See the episode called Vishnu and the Fish Machine. There are, of course, so many equivalents to this archetype of the flood to be found all over the place, so to say. In this Sanskrit word Arga, the name of the vessel of Ishwara, we hear the Greek name Argo. However, others propose it is derived from the Semitic word arek, used by the Phoenicians to signify long. This vessel would have been the largest ever launched. I found the word arik in Hebrew also means to extend, to prolong, to slow down, but also to arrange, to put in order and arrangement, measure, rhythm, with the latter associating dance and battle through the same rhythm. Throughout the last millennium until this day, there are people who devote their time to the unraveling of meanings of the given measures of this sacred diluvian vessel. Also, Sir Isaac Newton devoted much attention to it and even fixed the date of its building at about 936 BC. And here's the apples again. The Latin word for the mast is malus. It is linguistically related to malus, the apple, and some believe the wood of apple trees is excellent for mast building. But Argo Navis has lost its place at the sky, and the constellation is now divided up into Carina the keel, Vela the sails, and Puppis at the stern. Malus, the mast, has been gradually replaced by another small constellation called Pyxis or Pyxis Nautica, aka the nautical box or mariner's compass. So let's look at the lore concerning the mariner's compass. I made this mistake earlier. I said that the mast of Argo Navis gradually was replaced by Pyxis, but Ian Ridpath Authority on Star Lore contradicts this. Lakai, he says, set up a total new constellation somewhere halfway the 18th century, not using any of the stars that belong to the mast of Argo Navis. On his side, he makes sure as well to mention within the first paragraph that, quote, the ancient Greeks were completely unaware of the magnetic compass, unquote. Although it is relatively new constellation and I started out in the Neolithic, it is the nautical compass, so I wanted to add a bit on the Pyxis constellation anyway, just for the sake of it. The word Pyxis means box. The etymology connects the word to buxus tree, a small tree that is valued by woodcarvers and was referred to as box tree in olden days. Most of us may be familiar with this particular form of buxus, but in Anatolia we find buxus woods where the trees look much differently. Pliny wrote that the wood of the buxus or box tree is so hard and durable it can even withstand a fire. When searching on the term Pyxis, one automatically ends up in ancient Greece. All over the Aegean, a certain type of boxes has been recovered. The main characteristic is the removable lid. They apparently were mainly used in ceremony when a woman switches her parents' house for that of her husband. The description I find tells me that they are meant to contain valuables such as jewelry or makeup as well, something that for some religious reasons was a must during antiquity. The oldest are made of marble and stem from the Cycladic island of Naxos. If you wonder how they did this, remember I said earlier they use obsidian, volcanic glass, chisels and emery as abrasive. There are some terracotta examples from the geometric period around 1100 and to 800 BC that have big swastikas on them. They are not funeral urns, although often found as grave gifts. The bigger swastika examples are from the early geometrical period. The fact that we see symbols in about every empty spot on many of the decorations is a result of what is called horror vacui. We often see the swastika as one of the returning symbols that are used to fill up empty gaps in decorations. So shortly on that horror vacui, It is a Greek term translated into English as nature abhors a vacuum. It was first Aristotle who introduced the theory that the vacuum, empty space, nothingness cannot exist in nature, and nature therefore will try always to fill up a void immediately, if not with liquid then with gas, or what the ancient Greeks called ether. According to art historians, this concept is present in the art of that time, and it will remain present until even the late Middle Ages, as can be seen on some religious manuscripts of that time. And just for the record, the many Pyxides with horses on the lid mostly originate in Attica, Greece. Attica's surrounding is not suited for horses, so at that time the animals were exceptional. Only nobility, aristocrats or army officers had them. They still appeared noble, an image stemming from the time that they were considered sacred. The very few wooden boxes found were a distinct feature of Corinth at a certain period. From antiquity on, Corinth, formerly known as Ephyra, has been a rich region due to its location favorable for trade. It is also the place where many of the myths are said to originate from. Jason and Medea went and stayed there after returning from their search for the Golden Fleece. Corinth not only had an economic influence on its environment, but along with that, a cultural one as well. Their naming these specific boxes Pyxos is where the name Pyxis really derives from. But the Pyxis we are looking for, however, is the wooden box which contains the mariner's compass. How old the use of such nautical boxes exactly is hard to tell, but the Chinese are known to have kept their fish compasses in wooden boxes since at least the 7th century. I think James Cook had one of the first suspended magnetic nautical compasses, also called a boussole. The progress of the mariner's compass through the last millennium has well been documented, and it is not really where I wanted to go when I was researching this. I was a bit puzzled at this point. Why give such a status to a box by giving it this exceptional title for such a long time? Tree lore had only a few meager hints. Box tree lore speaks of the connection of the evergreen with the underworld, with funerals, but I also find a mention of an old tradition on the East Mediterranean to throw box tree branches into the sea whenever a ship leaves or is about to leave. Also, the wood being called Ashur wood apparently was used to build a tabernacle in biblical mythology. Another Hebraic source says that the poles of the tent around the tabernacle should be made from box tree. A tabernacle of a Catholic church, that's the little doors behind the altar, where the host and wine are stored, contains 2 sacred vessels, one for the wine and one for the bread. The vessel for the bread is called the Pyxis, at least according to a part of the sources, but others claim it is a special vessel that would be used only to transport the Holy Host, for example to bring the last sacraments to the dying. In retrospect, I think that I, like most of us, almost forgot what a treasure chest used to mean. A box around a treasure is not just any box, and I remember I was fascinated by that chest, maybe as much as by the hidden secret inside. Although not a children's dream, I think this is where the following kinda comes in. Each year, since the 12th century, a group of notables and members of the Guild of the Goldsmiths joins in their hall in the city of London to perform what is known as the Trial of the Pyx. This city, a city within a city, an autonomous and strange entity within the heart of Britain's capital, where even the Queen has to ask for permission to enter. So annually a number of coins are taken out of every new struck. They are locked into a pyx until the day of the trial. This particular pyx chamber is in the Westminster Abbey, but the boxes are now kept in the Royal Mint, only to come out on the day of the trial. The coins are distributed among these goldsmiths, who have then to assure the actual validity of each new coin that is distributed within a certain time. Weight measure and metallic composition have to be determined. These ingots or plates are the benchmark against which the coins are tested. Verdict is later, with as much ceremony, delivered to the Queen. This is of course not the only test they perform on coins, but this one is for the records. These benchmark plates are from past editions as memorable proof of the purity of the currency of the empire as judged by a jury of merchants. The religious, the merchants and the navigators all prefer the word pyx, as if to put emphasis on the great value of its mystified content. And I notice they seem to be the only ones with this particular preference. Well, this is it for what Sagitta, Argo, Navis and Pyxis is concerned. I still have some material left on this subject, which I will attempt to cramp into the next video and the last video on this subject. So yeah, see you around in a few, and as always, thanks for watching. Be well.